Good afternoon, everybody, and thank you for joining us for this very special panel this year on 40 years of ISC, reflecting on the past and shaping the future. My name is Addison Snell with Intersect 360 Research, and I was so honored that the show organizers reached out to me to ask about ideas for this panel. This is the 40th iteration of the ISC conference, going back many years, which I think really says a great deal. It's hard to do anything for 10 years, let alone 40. And the show has grown and become a really important part of the year for so many of us. I will say straight out that this show has done more for me in my career than any other conference over the course of the calendar year. And it's something that I really look forward to for myself and my team. For the 40 Years of ISC panel to get ideas for what we should talk about, I talked to the show organizers and we reached out to people who have helped organize the show or been affiliated with it in speaking or organizational roles over the show's history, past and present, and hopefully into the future, of course. And I said to the show organizers, I'm a market research professional. If you want to get any number of respondents at all, we have to really get a large number of people if we're asking them to send in ideas for this kind of thing. We sent 80 emails out to people who've been involved in the show. I couldn't believe the overwhelming responses that we got. Dozens and dozens of tremendous, well-thought-out responses to where we then had the problem of, okay, now we have almost too much, and narrowing it down to who we would invite to a panel and have it be representative of an ISC community was a real honor to get to do that. And I'm thrilled that we've been able to put this together. So the organization is to do it as 3 mini panels, so we'll get to rotate through a lot of voices, and to do it on 3 roughly different topic areas on scientific innovation and advancement and the role ISC has played, on community and collaboration, and on building the next generation of talent. And in each of those, to look at ISC, past, present, and future. And that's what we're going to do today in 3 sort of speed panels. And I hope you'll join me in welcoming and thanking all of the panelists. Hopefully a lot of them will be familiar faces to you as well. And I'm going to kick it off with the first panel on the scientific innovation and advancement. Please join me in welcoming Hatem Altaya from KAUST, Kristen Merritt from Alsace Flight, and Arndt Boda, a longtime contributor from Technical University of Munich and the Bavarian Research Foundation. I walk the tightrope here. I'm going to go over to the end here. This one's mine. So, talking about scientific innovation and advancement, Arndt, this is something that you even sent pictures. I loved the photo that you sent of you and Hans Moyer looking up at some of these technical presentations. So when you think back on the history of ISC mapped against that, what are some of the things that you remember in terms of innovations or advancements that ISC really was crucial in helping bring them about?
Yeah, I think that Hans Moyer, together with Erich Strohmeyer, with Jack Dongara, of course, and others, really helped create new innovation by introducing a yardstick sort of possibility of comparing new systems with the top 500 and later on with additional similar yardsticks like the Green 500.
Green 500, IO 500. It's had a lot of spin-offs that are all critical.
Yeah, and I would say, looking back these 40 years, at least in every decade there was something really new. So in the 80s, early 90s, I remember when it was a Mannheim small seminar with maybe 100 attendees. We were speaking about vector supercomputers, Cray, NEC-like, with lots of internal pipelining and very little concurrency. When 10 years later, it was completely different. It was the advent of microprocessors coming into supercomputers. And when we spoke about 100 megaflops for the vector supercomputers with Sandia, or with CM5, ASCII Red, we talked already about a teraflop or more. And then another 10 years later, in the 2010s, we were speaking about systems that now had not only microprocessors, but multiprocessors, multi-cores. And then there came this sort of heterogeneous arrangement with specific GPUs. And there again, there's a big advance in power. In the early 10s, we spoke about, let's say, several petaflops. And this then went over in the 20s to the first exaflop machines. And today, we have exaflop machines where even the single chip is composed of hundreds, thousands, or even more cores. So machines with 10 million cores today, if you compare this with the old gray one back in the 80s with one core, that's really tremendous innovation. So,
Adam, same question. You think back to the ISC's past, what do you associate in advancements that you've seen at ISC?
I guess as someone who works in linear algebra, I can give that perspective. My first ISC was giving a tutorial on how we accelerate dense linear algebra with GPUs, and at that time there were a lot of skeptical people, and I could understand that. But then along the last 10 to 15 years, we've seen many papers submitted at ISC conference that try to leverage the hardware compute capabilities of GPUs to accelerate linear algebra and accelerate application eventually. And those are, I think, important advances that we've seen being captured by the conference. And moving now to mixed precision, and believe it or not, some of the early work by Ozaki, the famous Ozaki scheme that many people are now looking at, the initial paper was actually published in 2018 at ISC. So that tells you how ISC was able to keep track and capture the latest innovation and research happening in our community.
It's something that I think about from my career as an industry analyst. I don't have the same technical background, to be honest. I mean, I have a business background. I'm an industry analyst, but it's my job to look at industry trends. And when I look around at ISC, I always see not just what's going on now, but where is the industry going? And that includes things I've been to, like the dedicated ISC cloud and big data conferences that we had in those times when these were really growing. I'm looking out in the audience and seeing Wolfgang Gensch, who I knew was really driving a lot of those things. These were terrific focused events, but eventually all those topics just kept folding into what we would do here. You see the latest state of the art and really capture industry trends by going to ISC and Kristen, thinking toward that, what do you look forward to? I mean, I come to ISC to get these industry trends. What do you look forward to tracking at ISC?
Well, the best part about ISC for me is I'm very similar to you. I do not come from an engineering background. My background is very much in communications. And the thing that I love the most is actually going to visit the posters. The research posters, the Women in HPC posters, there's twice as many authors this year. The division out into that like quantum area of research, and that's where like that young excitement really to me gets generated. And I think that looking at the next generation of who's coming in behind us, ISC actually uses multiple pathways for people to become involved in presenting their work. I started out as a project poster. Actually, I started out as a Women in HPC poster in a hotel because we had a workshop. And thanks to Isabel, who's sitting over there looking terrified at me, she's really was so open about people contributing back to this community and for me to find my voice. And that's the kind of things that these conferences bring together, and that's what this community is capable of.
And I don't think there's any apology necessary in not coming from a technical background. When we talked about putting this panel together, if we talk to only just the computer scientists, I think we sell short how much this conference means to a lot of people from a lot of different areas, whether it's in marketing or communication. I mean, we all come to this conference and it means different things to us in different ways. I think also back to Thomas Sterling's closing keynotes over the years and how much I would get from, hitting these rapid fire talks of where things are going. And we'll hear from Thomas more later on another iteration of these mini panels. Art, you were talking about the trend of just looking at where the different contributions come from over time.
Yeah, the contributions mostly, of course, came from the US, but there was, of course, also some now from Europe. We had, in the last 15 years, we saw something from China. We saw little from the African continent, which is a pity, of course. But I think HPC has internationalized somehow in the past. And ISC and SC in the US are contributors to bringing this to every country and to make good use of advances in high-performance computing.
I think we'll be seeing a lot more from the African continent over the rest of this decade, certainly into the next decade. But it seems like there's increasing activity there, and I feel like that'll become more important to us over time. And as we look at the evolution today out on, not just the show floor, but the sessions, it feels like we're all changing. Again, there's talk about AI, there's talk about precision models, there's talk about quantum computing. I mean, to me, it's very exciting. I feel like I'm right on the cutting edge. UEC just came out with its new spec. I feel like there's not a dimension of the HPC and AI market that we don't get to talk about here at ISC.
I would guess that a very interesting question for the near future will be to look at making really reuse of energy, because talking about AI gigafactories and the challenge of having several hundred megawatts of consumed, we need to make reuse of it, and that will be a big question for the future. For the manufacturers and also for the applications, how they can minimize consumption.
All right, from a KAUST perspective, what are these trends that you're looking at, right? You're right in the middle of it.
So, I mean, we're definitely looking into how we could, consume less power and energy and developing, algorithms that are aware of, the hardware we're running on, trying to get as much as possible from the hardware, and working closely with application folks and hardware people. So, the multidisciplinary aspect of the project we conduct at KAUST are something really central to, the university, vision, and we try to, leverage all the bits we can, to follow that vision.
I'm thrilled that you brought up consuming less power. Sustainability has been a major topic at ISC in recent years. I'll tell you, I remember moderating vendor showdown sessions over the past couple years, and every other slide deck would say net zero by some year. This year, I didn't see that at all. We are hearing about how do we consume less power with all this AI, but sustainability has become a very challenging topic, and I'll tell you, as an analyst, it's one we have very different conversations about in the United States versus Germany versus Japan. And a conference like this, you really get to focus on that global sustainability angle, right?
So if I can jump in.
Please.
I was really lucky. ISC, by the way, is like a conference people move towards. And right before, literally the week before this conference, I had the joy of going on a bit of a road show around the UK. And I started at the EPCC, and I went to Durham before coming here. And the discussions around sustainability, I realized before I even ended up in a panel, a pre-interview with you, was that I was getting a real sense of how the UK was seeing the power and cooling aspects of high-performance computing. And this is for all supercomputing. Like, let's remove all the acronyms and just say supercomputing. The concern is definitely different, from when I talked to people from Germany, from when I talked to you about the US. And I was grateful that really the concerns that I was gathering from my roadshow was that they are very much in a fix of this is almost beyond supercomputing now. We are now needing to work with our governments, our local constituencies. We have to think about things almost bigger than ourselves, which is kind of a wonderful thing in some aspects because of the impact supercomputing is having in this world, and that people are recognizing it and waking up to it. And I'm excited here to spend more time learning what people are doing to do the hardware, to do the software, and how they're addressing it, because that I can then take back to the UK and feed back to the community.
Well, let's talk about that for a second, because I think a big thing that ISC has done is influence public perception of supercomputer and HPC over the years, right? And Art, you had talked about the top 500 list. You've probably got a great perspective on the effect ISC has had on the global scale.
Yeah, when ISC started in the 80s, nobody in the bigger public cared about supercomputers, but that has completely changed. Now, at every release of a new top 500 list, you can read it in every newspaper, and even in TV sessions or so, you can hear about that. So that's one of the big, very good successes that ISC and the creators of ISC really made.
Yeah, Hadam, do you have views on that?
Oh, sure. I mean, I collaborate with the Polytechnic University in Marrakesh, in Morocco. So they've been invited for the first time in this HPC in the World program at ISC. So tomorrow they will be presenting how they run their HPC center 100% solar energy. Right, so that's actually really interesting to see that happening, in Africa, and I think it's an important, aspect to demonstrate. And another aspect is the fact that we HPC sometimes people we are the invisible, we are the technology enabler, and it is hard for us to reach out to tell the work that we do and to democratize the technology that we do at various levels. And I think having a conference like ASC to show that is actually helpful to convey the main messages.
Kristen, you work with a lot of early career people, of course, who come into this space, and we've got a whole mini panel coming up on building the next generation, so I don't want to dive too far into that. But from my perspective, when I've talked to early career people who might be coming into this space, the notion of innovation, where we ask, well, what are the issues you really care about, right? Whether it's climate or sustainability or exploring outer space or finding new energy sources or whatever young people get passionate about, it seems like you can always find some kind of hook into HPC and supercomputing. As an analyst, I feel like I get to be part of all the conversations all the time. Do you see younger people get engaged with that as well?
I think so. There was this thing that happened a couple years ago. People might have known it. It was called COVID. And I think that was almost a watershed moment for supercomputing in general, because from that, people began to see that supercomputers did more than just land, Mars rovers and predict the weather. They began to realize the impact that supercomputing had on everyday lives. And a lot of the early career people that I'm seeing kind of bubbling up from the surface are actually reading, just like Arndt said. They're reading about what we do in the news. They're realizing that they can actually make a difference. I think a really good example of that is actually the HPC AI work that they do with healthcare, especially with scans and screenings. I was lucky enough to work on 2 projects, one actually for whether it's COVID or pneumonia, and another one dealing with breast cancer research. These had nothing to do with computer scientists. These were all from the departments of neuroscience who walked in to figure out that they'd read something from supercomputing, and they said, yes, we can absolutely bring these things together, train the models, and get stuff done. And none of these people would have ever considered the field, but they found an article, they found that spark, and they kept going.
I think we have just a couple minutes left, and maybe we can use it to think through, are there particular scientific innovations or advancements that you think are still out there on the horizon, any of you, that you think we might see at an ISC coming up in the future? I get excited about things like I'll tell you one that I don't hear as much about as I think we should, brain research. If you could simulate the working of a human brain, and there's research going on this all the time, it's difficult to do physical experimentation, right? And if we could simulate anything from addiction to Alzheimer's and how it works in the brain, I think that unlocks a whole new world, similar to what we saw with genomics since the mapping of the human genome in the year 2000. And that sounds like the end of a problem. Great, you've mapped it. Can we go home? Well, you just invented genomics, right? Now we're going to go do all this stuff. Science is like that. It has arbitrary complexity. What things do you think about that will be out there in the future at ISC? This is a bonus question because we have 4 minutes left.
I want to say that there's some really great stuff happening in biomedical research and supercomputing right now. They aspire to exascale, but some of the work that I've seen with simulating heart attacks and some of the earlier stuff with actual human modeling, even though it is really complicated, because like mapping a brain, it's quote unquote complicated, but there are steps being made. People have moved off those workstations. They are now working on the clusters. And if there was one thing to focus on with the healthcare side of things, any of the biomedical work, anything on digital twins in terms of actual human modeling is really amazing stuff. And it is a long haul. It is a big way to the Star Trek scanner, but they're actually working on it. And I hope that before my time to retire out of this field comes, I get to see the Star Trek scanner.
Hadam, what do you think?
Yeah, I mean, I've been working in computational biology for human genome, for smart health, and but also lately for smart agriculture, trying to look at the wheat genome and mapping those genome, trying to identify those genes that are highly associated with various sickness or phenotypes. And the main challenge there, although the topic is extremely interesting and inspiring, the main challenge that I see is connecting the dots. Again, going back to the theme of the conference, where domain scientists and ourselves as HPC, we have a huge gap. And it is really hard to, it takes us time just to understand each other. We don't use, the same language. Performance for us means performance, something else for them, right? But this is really exciting, and the passion around this project keep us going and trying to solve those challenging problems.
All right, you've had such a great view on the ISCs of the past. I'll give you the last word on the ISCs of the future. Where are we going?
Yeah, I guess that there are some very easy problems like logistics, but that are mathematically NP hard or NP complete. And these can be partly solved if we arrive at really integrating quantum computing into classical HPC. And there was a lot of work at this ISC where you can see people trying to bring together classical HPC and doing quantum computing together in a joint program in a smooth way that can make such very hard problems solvable in the future. And I think that's a big thing for the future.
I think that's a tremendous thought to close on, because I think there are a lot of specialist types of conferences that you can go to, whether it's a particular application area or a particular technology area. But I feel like the community around ISC is a place where we can talk about, here's an application, and we might combine classical HPC methods, analytics, machine learning, quantum computing. How do we apply all of these different metrics to what really is ultimately about is scientific advancement and what we can bring through the rest of the community, and what's the place of supercomputing in the world. I think ISC is a really special place for it. Thank you very much for joining me for the first part of the panel. Please join me in thanking these panelists. But wait, there's more. We're going to now focus on a separate panel looking really at the notion of community and collaboration and how important that is to innovation in general and what the role of ISC is. Please join me in welcoming to the stage Stefan Schenk from BASF, Anja Gerbes from University of Göttingen, and Michele De Lorenzi from ETH Zurich. Come on in, everybody. Okay, what are we talking about here? Community and collaboration. I think the thing I think about with this is just what it's meant to me in my career and the people that I get to meet with and how it helps me. And Stefan, you sent in a really passionate reply on this exact topic, which is why I'm so glad to be sitting here next to you with this. So when you think about community and collaboration, what has ISC meant to you in the past and in your career? How has it helped influence you?
So for me, ISC has always been more of a community gathering than a really scientific conference. That's my personal take. And ISC helped me exactly to shape my career inside BASF because from the exchange with peers, I was able to bring new ideas into my working place. And that helped me a lot. So it's more about a homecoming every year, more and more, because I know more and more people. And it's really like yesterday at a hotel reception, checking in, meeting the first known people directly. I check in. That for me is part of the ISC experience. And also from a business perspective, if I say I go to a conference, then immediately comes the question of, who's going to pay for that? If I say I'm going for an exchange with my peers to get outside in view, then this is a completely different story. So I really appreciate being part of this community and knowing many people, and some of them I would also call friends, and this is what makes ISC for me.
Michelle, you also sent in some terrific thoughts about what it's meant not only for you, but for a whole country.
Yes, that's correct. So back in 2009, I was moving internally from ETH Zurich to CSCS, with National Supercomputing Center. And that time I was in charge of business development. And my boss told me, Michele, you want to do business development, you have to learn what is outside Switzerland, and because we are not working alone. And we came all here, was in Hamburg. I was exactly in the this old building, I suppose. And I discovered a new world for me. I discovered new colleagues, and looked at how everyone were working together and exchanging knowledge. And at the same time, Switzerland, a small country, is important that we look outside, what is outside Switzerland, what is in Europe, what is in the world. But at the same time, we also understood, we also have people inside Switzerland which are working HPC. At that time, we had more about internal conferences in Switzerland dedicated to science, but less for operating the supercomputers. And we were all here. I just went today in the city. I was next to the city hall or the Handelskammer, and we were there at a table. I've seen, where are you coming from? Oh, I am from Basel. Oh, nice to see you. Where are you coming from? Bern. And you. And so we discovered that, in fact, we had to come to Hamburg to discover that we have a community in Switzerland. And what we did, we create a known association, or a kind of association. The name is HPCCH. It's still alive today. We have now in 16 years 32 meetings, and we always get together to exchange the knowledge. We copied a little bit what is happening here, adapted to Switzerland. But this does not mean we have to close ourselves. We also come here. But this exchange has to take place at different sizes inside your country, inside maybe even your university, but also inside Europe. And this is what is happening here at ISC every year, again.
Now, Anya, I'm going to come to you next. And I hope you don't mind if I say that I said at the start that we got dozens of responses that came in. Nobody responded more thoroughly, more well thought out, and with more care than Anya in every single category that came through. And when I said to the show organizers, I kind of like to invite Anya onto one of these panels, it was almost applause coming in over the email. And Anya said to me in an email that she was nervous, that she's not accustomed to being on the stage. Anya has been working with ISC behind the scenes since how long?
Since 2015.
Since 2015, and puts a ton of effort into this show and making sure that we have a good experience when we're here. There's, I think, no one better to come up and talk about community and collaboration. So how do you approach the show? How do you feel about it? What do you look forward to when you come to the show? What do you think about it?
So ISC community is for me like family. So ISC has played a pivotal role in fostering community and collaboration within the HPC sector and the HPC community. And ISC has an open and welcoming environment for everyone, for every attendee. So women in HPC collaboration, or birds of a feather session, or student volunteer program, or student cluster competition, networking opportunities, it's all. And the ISC's partnership with the Women in HPC provides platforms for underrepresented groups to present and showcase their work, engage with industry leaders and with all the attendees, and get access to mentorship possibilities. So ISC also hosts BOF sessions, which encourage the attendees lively discussions among attendees, experts and leaders through shared interests within the HPC community. And the BOF sessions makes it possible and gives a unique opportunity to have networking, for knowledge exchange, and for collaborative problem solving. And the student cluster competition is a great initiative because it is the next generation in HPC. So it's all networking.
And it's impossible to separate all of these out into truly separate topics. I mean, we wind up talking about all of them in all these directions. I have to say something for me in my career with ISC. We launched Intersect 360 Research as an independent brand from Tabor Research at ISC in 2009. I was here. That was a big launch for Chris Willard and myself. And in those early years, owning my own small company, I was terrified. I mean, I'm in my 30s. I want to get here, and it's my big business development. I want to have as many meetings as I can and just sell. You know, it took me time to get more comfortable to where I spend more of my time just in meetings, just in community. Last year at ISC 24, we had another huge launch, which was our HPC AI leadership organization. Stefan, you're on the advisory committee. We had our booth for the first time, and that was nothing but community building. We weren't selling a thing. And we got way more out of that than all of the speed date sales things that I try to do while we're here. I mean, it's still important for me to have all of those kinds of meetings, but I find the community for me is really the most valuable thing in terms of really advancing what we do, and ISC's been a huge part of it. And Anya, what I loved about your example is that you talked about all the different ways that happens. I mean, we've got, sure, the exhibit hall is terrific, but BOFs and student cluster competitions and poster sessions and all of the different panels that we get to do. What do you look forward to, all three of you, when you come to a show? What are the parts that you really want to get involved in?
Let me start. So for me, I always had the pleasure to have some active part over the last couple of years, and I'm very grateful for that. I would say this panel stands out. To be here is kind of the pinnacle. Over the years, I see that when I prepare for ISC, I pick less and less sessions, not because the sessions are not interesting, quite the contrary, but I get to meet more and more people. And I try to really emphasize this because everyone is here. So no one has to do further traveling than maybe from the hotel to the venue, which is quite comfortable. And I'm also in the very comfortable situation that I can have a virtual briefing on technology also, since I'm working for a big corporate that works easy, but I cannot meet the people in person. So I more and more prioritize really contacts and then try to squeeze in everything else into that schedule.
Michelle.
So, Stefan, you are a very serious person, so I also like the parties in the evening. That's the part I like. So that's but it's also very important because it's you really feel the people, you spoke to the people, and it's not so the official frame we have during the conference. For me, my main job has always been to be at the booth to represent CSCS, and people told to me, but it's boring to stay all the day to the booth and so on. I said, no, you're completely wrong. people have to come to you to visit you. So I am the most important people. If people care about me, they will visit me. I don't go to the other people. And this is really, I like very much to welcome people, to explain the mission of the Swiss National Supercomputing Center, to connect the people, to help them to understand what we are doing. And for me, has really been the most interesting job we have been doing there. And then in a part, we also had then the student competition, cluster competition, where we also had time to support the team of people from Switzerland. And this was for me, one of the nicest things we had is about the time we spend to speak to people. So we had, for example, at the CSCS, we had open doors, and there was a young lady, and I found her later here at the student competition and asked, why are you here? She said, you inspired me when we came to you, visiting you at CSCS, and she came then here to ISC conference. So I think it's very important, all the work we invest to explain to the people what we are doing.
Anya, you already kind of answered the first question, but how have you seen ISC evolving over the last couple of years? Kristen brought up COVID, of course, which was its whole thing, right? But in terms of how we keep getting the community together with different technologies or different formats, that's something you've been right in the middle of. How is it evolving, or how do you think it's continuing to evolve?
So it's more personalized experiences as possible. So AI related and AI powered tools can help attendees to find relevant sessions and find people to connect with, to network with, and summarize key takeaways from discussions, as an example. Or conferences may incorporate virtual reality to have more inclusive and more immersive meetings. And it's about moving forward AI, virtual reality, and the sustainable effort will connect the shaping the way of how we will collaborate in the future.
I really like that answer, and I got to say, as someone who goes to a lot of events, oh my gosh, every one of them wants me to download an app. I have to have an app for every single thing I go do. The Swap Card app is really good. I mean, it's not just about here's the calendar and the sessions, and I think it's because the number one emphasis of it is on networking. It really does help connect me to other people who are at the conference. And sure, I can keep the schedule straight, but you mentioned all of these AI tools and things, and I just, on the spur of the moment, I had to give a nod to Swap Card. But let's start sticking with this notion of the evolution, because there's a couple of other kind of background trends. First of all, the obvious one is the inclusion of a lot of different approaches or different types of technologies, whether it's AI or accelerators or quantum, and all of these become part of the ISC experience. And then there's also the notion of community and collaboration in a cross-border, in a world where national sovereignty issues have been on the rise, right? And I want this to be my supercomputing in AI, and that one's your supercomputing in AI. Stefan, how do you see this space kind of evolving, and what's the importance of ISC against the backdrop of those trends?
So for me, ISC is the international supercomputing. Yeah? And if I remember correctly, we have more and more people from different countries. Yeah? And for me also, I put a focus on ISC, not going to supercomputing. I've been once, was great, but it was huge. And what I like about ISC is that it's not that huge. Yeah? Still, you get to meet a lot of people there with different backgrounds. And even Switzerland and Germany are quite different, even though they are neighbors. Yeah? And so really getting these different perspectives from different countries. And I'm happy that we have sessions like HPC in Asia, where things that you don't have in your everyday bubble are brought to your attention if you want to. And that's kind of looking beyond your own teacup rim. It's a big part of the conference series, and then I like this very much.
Go ahead.
Okay, you're looking at me. First of all, I think that you speak about this development over the year and the future. I think to manage the growth over 40 years is a huge work, because you don't know, you want to grow too much, not enough. And I have to say, very positive, I still feel home here. When I am here in Hamburg, the size is the right size. It's not too large, not too small. And it's not so easy to find the right size. And I think that is happening well. At the same time, when I look about who the people are that are attending the conference today, I told to you, yeah, you are so nerdy about quantum chemistry. And people are changing who is coming here, because in the beginning, we had more technical people interested in fluidodynamics and very technical things, and the community is changing over the year. We see more people coming more from business, and people, it's not as a niche market, supercomputing, but it's leading edge. Every time I feel more and more to be in the leading edge of what is happening about the world. This is bring another responsibility, but also other people we have to interact with other way of thinking. So, and that's we have to learn how to manage now this different communication with other kind of stakeholders. And also when we open it's not only about the top 500, which is in the newspaper, but it's about the impact of what we are doing every day with our work, which is relative for the society. So we are really in all the pages, not only in the technical one. And this is a growth we have to learn. So it's a challenge for us, also I think for us computing center, but also for the conference, how to open up these new kind of stakeholders over time, and to keep on one side their own values, but open up to these new trends that are changing our society.
Anya, do you have thoughts on this evolving in the future and how the family keeps growing? I love that you call it a family.
So what I saw from my work, that it's a community, it's not only HPC anymore. So it's biology or medicine, or from physics, from everywhere. They need to work on HPC clusters. And it's like we need to find ways how we can explain the way how they can work on HPC clusters if they never worked on this before. Like digital humanists, as an example. They need these kind of resources, but they don't know how to use it. And we need to find ways to explain them how to work on the clusters.
I mean, what a topic. Something I've found to be true in high-performance computing over the years is that it doesn't have to be the world's biggest supercomputers or the top 10 list. Every person I meet who's got an HPC cluster, even if it's 4 nodes of whatever they're researching, they tend to be a world expert in whatever it is that they're doing. It's cool. Everybody's leaders, and I learn every time I come to a conference like this. I saw the keynote this morning. I had no idea there was a theoretical form of carbon that's harder than a diamond. I was fascinated. Tell me more about that. And you're going to try to synthesize it, and we can help with that? I think that's very cool. And, I don't get that in, all the time. And I get to learn from all of you as this goes forward. As for the international nature of it, I would have been honored in any case to get to be involved in this panel. But as an American in particular, I appreciate the seat in the chair, and I will be charging 150% tariffs to all of the panelists, so we'll work that out after. And I don't think there's going to be a problem with that. It's just it'll go that way because I said so.
But it's only for today. Tomorrow it's going to change, right?
As far as you know today, it's going to be permanent. Yeah, That's been a fun thing to predict as well in my role as analyst. Okay, any other final thoughts on community and collaboration? I was really glad that all of you joined me on this panel. All right, then we can move on to the next one. Please
Thank you.
Join me in thanking these panelists. Please leave your microphones on the chairs. And we're going to move on to the third of 3 sessions. And here we're going to focus on a topic that's really been highlighted. Every bit of research that we've done through our HPC AI leadership organization or other surveys and over the years, we found that talent development quickly rises to the top of everybody's watch list of one of the most important issues that faces our industry is how do we shepherd this into new generations. And joining me on building the next generation, Karina Peshetova from IT for Innovations, Marlene Orsprong from Prace, and Thomas Sterling from TAC. Good to see you. Now, Thomas, I'm going to start with you because you also sent in long and passionate replies, and you're someone who's well known to this audience. And moreover, I could have dropped you in very confidently in any one of these 3 sessions, particularly on scientific advancement and innovation. But some of the things that you had to say about building new generations of talent and what ISC has meant to you over the years really struck a chord with me. So when you think about some of the careers that you've seen at ISC and you've gotten to see them through different development phases and how they've touched you in your career, can you just talk about that and how you've seen the effect of ISC on building people's careers?
That's a tall order.
I think you're up to it, though.
Thank you. And this is a particularly, I would say exceptional year or sets of years associating with us the future of HPC. The last, and dare I say, 30 years or so, approaching 35 years, has been a consistent trend of the combination of technologies and programming models. And surprisingly, as different as every year seems to be, there are also highly stable parts of that as well. For an example, MPI 1, 1.1, 2, 3, and 4, just to give instances. Now we are really locked in with the, forgive the cliche, end of Moore's law, end of Denier scaling, nanoscale technologies. We are recognizing that we are either dead or facing a very new opportunity or set of opportunities. And so I would say simply that this is, and your panel is very appropriately positioned, this is the time for change.
Well, and when you think of, are there careers that are touched you in particular or people that you think of when we think about developing careers through the history of ISC?
Well, I hate to admit it, but I've been around for a while.
I wouldn't have known.
And so I have watched careers from fairly young and junior people up to their stage of retirement. This is true. Let me mention just a couple of people you have heard of but may not think of as truly the leaders. In no particular order of importance, I would mention Bill Gropp. Bill, formerly of, after he graduated, I think it was from Yale, he spent years at the Argonne National Laboratory, where he developed PETSI and where he started the development, and I say he, of course, with many colleagues, of MPI. And what was his major significant impact was, in fact, not just the development of MPI, which in some ways was a backward step from the many different individual cases, but rather the team building the coalescence of many ideas into a single idea into MPI. But he and his team developed the first reduction to practice, the first runtime system that allowed him and many others, including, may I say, myself and my team at that time, developing what has become known as the Beowulf cluster computing. I didn't appreciate that that would become the case. That's how I got to know Bill. But Bill went on and developed a PETC, which was the major computing model for simplifying the programming of many things. A second is Paul Messina. Now, you may have heard of Bill. If you were in the right circles, you would definitely have heard and probably been led by Paul. But for those of you who have not, Paul has filled a very special role where he was a combination of administrator, of leader, including technical leader, and in idea creation. He also, as it happens, was at Argonne National Lab in its earlier years, was invited to lead a new consortium at Caltech, at the California Institute of Technology, in about 1990 or so, I don't know the exact date, which was the implementation and deployment of the prototype of bear with me, the Intel Touchstone Delta. He then proceeded to lead the Department of Energy ASCII program, which, by the way, pretty much burned him out for a period of time, a short period of time. He ultimately, and I won't go on with the long legacy of his contributions, but he ultimately was the leader of the United States exascale computing program. He is only just retired, somewhat long overdue. Then there is okay, to be honest, I'm a little fuzzy on the exact association of the next individual with ISC, though his contributions certainly span ISC as well as other organizations.
All right, we'll take one more. Go ahead.
Burton Smith.
Burton Smith is hard to leave out. I appreciate it.
Okay. And Burton is certainly a pioneer, if anyone was, over many years. And I met him when I was a graduate student, just to give you a sense of the time span going on. And we're talking about 40 plus years. Burton, and sadly he has passed away recently, but he developed the concept of multi-threaded computer architecture. He did this in the 1980s and managed to see it all the way through its implementation, not just in its first generation, which was the MTA-1, multi-threaded architecture 1, but also in a very different technology, the MTA-2.
I really appreciated having you on this panel, Thomas, because you have that perspective of what ISC has meant to careers over time. And Mayelen and Corinne, I'll ask you a sort of a related but different question, which is how do you see ISC affecting people's early careers now as we try to build the next generation, Marlene? And are there particular examples that you think of or activities that you think of?
I think ISC as a conference is, from all the conferences that I've seen and done in HPC Center, is one of the most open ones. It's one of the most welcoming ones. Earlier somebody said it was not too big and not too small. It's not so overwhelming that when you come in here you are completely lost, but it's not so small either that you feel that you are missing out on connections that you were looking for. I don't really have a person as such in mind that I would say, okay, this is a person that I've seen at ISC blooming, because my approach, I mean, I'm also not a technical, I don't have a technical background. I'm international business communications. I'm, doing the connective work. I'm not doing the technical work. And my approach has also always been to focus on the team effort, to make sure that you create groups and communities where you can, you can get people in there and say, we are doing this thing, come join us. So for me to mention one or two people, this is always for me like, if I mention this person, I have to mention all these other people as well, because we're doing it together.
I love that you brought up the team aspect, because I think that is part of the culture that I see at ISC today, and everything from student cluster competitions to poster sessions. There's an emphasis on what a team has done and not just any one person. And I think being part of a team can be something that really makes it an easier transition for any one person coming in. And I think, I also love what you said about making it welcoming. That's such an important notion of how we bring more people into this community. And Karina, is something that you really spoke passionately about in your responses to this question. So why don't you talk about trying to make ISC a more welcoming place?
I think it already is a welcoming place. Even the community, I always find it very welcoming. My background is also not technical. I'm also from communications. Now I lead training and education, and I do come into contact with lots of students. And I'm very happy to see that the EU Master for HPC students are attending in large numbers, and I meet them, and I organized a summer school for them, so they recognize me. And what they have, I think I have a good news for all the people in the audience who are from industry. They come here to create their own network. They are starting, and I think they recognize ISC as a place where to go when they are not yet decided about their career. So I would really recommend talk to these people. They are really bright minds, and you can get the next talent for your companies, for your research groups.
Now, another aspect of talent development, of course, is who we're bringing into this space. And Thomas, you gave a great response, but I think it also highlights that the history of our industry has been really male-dominated. And here I am, a man sitting in this chair, and there's been a lot of not as much representation. It's something that ISC really leans into in terms of inclusivity and development. Talk about why that's important, and I'll stick here, Karina, go ahead.
Yes, I think it's really great what ISC is doing together with Women in HPC. There's so many sessions which are dedicated to the inclusivity and to giving space for also women to showcase their work, because they are there in the field.
Marjolaine, do you want to comment on inclusivity also?
Well, inclusivity for me, in a lot of cases, means feeling safe where you are, feeling that I don't stand out, that that the space welcomes and accommodates me. And I do feel that if you want to be inclusive, you have to do a number of things that might not be, you might not need them yourself. But if you put them there, then those people who need those accommodations will feel safer and will feel happier and will feel more welcome, where for you it might not even make a difference at all. If you want, I can give you a very small concrete example.
Sure.
Look at this stage. There's no step-free access. Whereas, if there would be a ramp, you and me, we would just walk up the ramp. It wouldn't change anything for us to walk up the stairs or walk up the ramp. But if you have somebody who cannot walk up the stairs, they will feel like, oops, this podium is excluding me. And it's these kind of small, I don't want to speak on people who need all these, who need these accommodations, because I'm not the one needing them. But I really think there's a lot of things you can do to make a space safe and welcoming for a lot more people without actually changing it for the people that are already there. And if you want to invite new people into your space, you're going to have to do new things.
I'll comment on it myself, because I find it to be so important. And Marjolaine, you and I met for the first time in person earlier today, and right away I kind of had this moment of bonding. You had a rainbow lanyard on. Now we all took our badges off coming off, but I'm wearing Human Rights Campaign socks at the same time, and it's kind of the same feeling. And I think it's that notion of being welcoming as we can to as many people as we can, because we need all the talent we get. Not only is it the right thing to do, right, if we want to be welcoming to people and be polite and respectful, but I need to find talent no matter where I get it. And the way I think of diversity and inclusion myself isn't from the standpoint of, well, I have 8 employees in my company and they need to be exactly one of this and one of this. I think that would be very difficult to manage. But I can ask myself, am I doing what I can to open my recruiting opportunities to as many people as possible and make them feel welcome, whether that's by gender, by race, or by sexual identity, or anything else. How do I make that as welcoming as I can? And I think the ISC community does a beautiful job of that. And I'll say one other thing about this, that the notion of DEI, or whatever you want to call it, has been knocked around a bit in the United States in particular recently, and it's caused a lot of people back off of it. I try to think of am I being inclusive and welcome, which is hard to argue against. But what I would say about it is, since I've got the microphone for a second, if your company used to be running a big diversity campaign before and you're not now, then you were never really for it. You were just doing it for the marketing benefit, right? Really ask yourselves, are you for inclusivity or not? And take a stand if you support it. Go ahead, back.
Yeah, just to make the point that DEA or inclusivity or diversity or whatever it is you want to call it, it's not a fringe benefit. It's not something that you just should cut when times are difficult. It should be part of your core DNA. This should be in your systems, your structures should be accommodating this diversity. If you put it in you might need to put it in a separate person, a separate department to get started, but if you keep it there and you see it as something that can be cut when you no longer need it, you misunderstood what we're dealing with here, because it should be part of your being. It should actually even go without saying. It should not be when you design a space or design an office, you think about what should we do to make this inclusive? It should actually be that somebody would go like, why are we not doing this? Why is this not even thought of? It should be that kind of a reflex. And I think a lot of people, and yes, the US is a very sad example of this, still see it as something that, is just something nice to have, a fringe benefit, and not something that it should be part of our human experience.
Karina, you were talking about it's more than just attracting the talent as well.
Yes, well, if we put so much effort into attracting the talent, then we should also do something for retaining the talent, because we can see that people leave the field, and I will say people, mostly women, get overwhelmed, maybe I don't know, scared a bit when they see the environment. And I think we should talk to them and try to find out what makes them leave the field, because it's a pity when we have already put so much effort into getting them into the field. So retaining is also something we should look into and create strategies how to avoid losing talent.
Now, Thomas, I want to come back full circle to something that you were talking about, because I don't want to completely ignore the technical aspects of this either. You were saying that this is a moment of change for our industry. And if you think about what advice you would have for new talent coming in and what they do at ISC, or how are we bringing in new technical dimensions to what we do, how would you look at bringing new technical talent into an industry like this, or what advice would you give to new people coming into ISC?
So we haven't had this kind of change, excuse me, since the end of the 1980s, the beginning of the 1990s. And I say that without the intent of simply expanding on the moment of this panel. There are a set of requirements, of needs, that emphasize creativity. And that creativity right now is driven by the undercutting of past trends and the need or building of new trends. And specifically, we first need to make sure that people are in fact educated in the conventional or in the current state of the art, both in hardware and software. I don't mean to oversimplify, but that expands to several different factors, not the least of which is the highest end computing and how that scales down to the low. And frankly, the top 500 list is actually very good at covering that range of opportunities. The second, however, is a set of requirements. And these are, in fact, the need for advancement in cluster computing, in cloud computing, but then more so in non-von Neumann, and I will emphasize memory-centric computing, which I happen to personally feel is an opportunity driving in the near future, and then a broader neuromorphic computer, and yes, finally, quantum computing. Now, these are not replacements for each other, but in fact, the future of computing demands that their synergies be of a new and potentially radical form that will occur. So I see the future. And all of the members of this panel are having to look forward the creativity, the innovation, not simply the turning of the crank. I hope that addresses your
Absolutely,
question.
and I'll give one more thought as sort of a look ahead to the future in ISC. I love what I see ISC doing with talent development, and in particular student cluster competitions, the poster sessions. Go check, if you don't usually do it, go check out the student cluster competitions and give some love to your future bosses out there, right? It's very cool. But I can't quite say that ISC does it the best I've ever seen, maybe second place. The best I've seen is Happy Satole's conference annually at the Center for High Performance Computing in South Africa, and what he does. He not only has the college students come in, he regularly has high school students come visit, and even middle schoolers come in for part of it. And like, how do we really capture kids' attention about what can be done with, and at age-appropriate levels, but what can be done with supercomputing? Because there's so much fascinating content at something like this. I think the more we share it with the kids coming in, I think the future, as you were saying, Thomas, is certainly bright, but there's some challenges ahead of us, and I look forward to seeing it at ISCs in the future. All right, don't go anywhere, but start by clapping for these panelists. And then I have two more items of business to take care of. First of all, you see some sample apples over here. This is a special 40th anniversary gift that you can get handed to. I believe it was on the way out the door. We're looking forward to that. And second, we couldn't conclude this panel. Thomas, I mentioned before your closing keynote sessions and how much they've meant over the time. And this being all about building future generations in HPC. I am acutely aware that everything I do, I'm standing on the shoulders of people who came before. It really lays it out. And even as things change, we don't get to tomorrow without everything that's been done before us. And Martin wanted to come up and make a special announcement before we close. Take it away, Martin.
Yeah, good afternoon, everyone. As we celebrate 40 years of ISC, it's an honor and a great pleasure to thank someone who has shaped this conference like very few other people. And for over 20 years, Thomas Sterling delivered the ISC closing keynote, a tradition that brought rhythm and also identity to our conference program. And Thomas' talk was never just the final slot. It was the highlight all of us looked forward to and stayed for.
Hear, hear.
In fact, it was ranked, very often ranked, the top-rated presentation of the entire event. So dear Thomas, on behalf of the ISC team and the ISC community, thank you. Thank you very much for your strong commitment and the unique presence you brought to this stage year after year. Thank you. So, ladies and gentlemen, please join me in a warm round of applause for Professor Thomas Sterling, a true ISC legend.
Thank you all very much. I'm honestly flattered. Thank you for this. But let me, and this is an obligation, my talks, which were unique in my career and career forming just over 20 years, were entirely the result of and launched by Hans Maurer, your father, and his vision of a future. And I didn't do what he told me. He said that I would speak to this conference until I died. And, well, I proved him wrong. But other than that, I assure you that it is my gratitude to the conference and to the community rapidly evolving that I want to impress on you and everyone. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Martin. This has been a great honor. Thank you for letting me moderate this panel. And congratulations on 40 years. Thank you, everybody.